Hello everyone, it's Jotto, and welcome to another deck tech. This is for Mono-Corruption Zombies. Now, this is the last of the deck techs I kind of wanted to get in before the patch. I didn't want to do Elves because I know they're getting changed, and Rage I did last week because I figured, well, it'll probably get changed somehow. But for this one, I don't personally think the Zombies is going to receive any changes in the next month. So I figured I might as well cover it now, even though there's going to be a patch in a few days. I would be absolutely astonished if Mono Corruption gets changed. And even if there are any buffs to Corruption cards, I think that the weak Corruption cards wouldn't even fit in this archetype, so I figured it was a safe bet to go over now. Now, this is one of the 5 playable decks. Is kind of it's the top 5 really. You've got Hermelion and just Elves at the top, and then you've got the sort of quartet of tier 2 decks: Mono Rage, Mono Order, Mono Corruption, and Wisdom Implants. Those are like the 4 reasonably good tier 2 decks. Corruption is on the lower end of those tier 2 decks, but is still very, very much playable, and Powell is the big sort of poster boy for zombies. Now, before we get started, I would like to point out that Zombies is not a solved list. There's lots of different versions, and I know Powell plays one with Vermin. I don't personally, but there's lots of numbers to tweak around, and when I get to certain cards that are not exactly solved in terms of numbers, I'll kind of go over why some people play less or more, etc. So, with that incredibly long intro out the way, let's get started. First things first, the hero, Basic Nefaro. It's a hero that gets a lot of flack for being underpowered. I personally disagree. I think he's a very useful hero, and he is what allows you to get any value whatsoever out of your very, very slow, dorky creatures. Zombies is kind of the king of just weird creatures that don't look like they should work, but they do. And part of the reason for it is Nefaros allowing you to hit 3-speed and 2-speed creatures with your big, slow, dorky zombies. So yeah, Nefaros is a very, very important hero. Next, we'll start with the creature base, Zombie Legionnaire. The only 1-drop, it's a very, very powerful 1-drop. It's not incarnate level of powerful, but it's very, very strong. 2/2. It can attack things with 2 speed because of Nefaro, so it can actually hit a decent number of creatures, and will get a lot of damage in. In addition, it also works with some of the zombie synergy with Necromancer, so it's just a pretty good 1-drop. Now, the other 1-drop you can play is Vermin, and Powell's version plays Vermin. I'm not entirely sold on it, but I'm also not adverse to it. I think it's worth testing. I haven't really played zombies enough recently to kind of try different versions of Vermin. Vermin is very, very good against red in particular because it kills Flame Serpent and Fia and all the goblins. And you can kind of use it with Flesh Sculptor, but Flesh Sculptor doesn't work with Tombs of the Damned. So I don't know. Sixo, I think, was playing a Vermin list at Pioneers, but I'm just not sure which version's better, and I think, well, I mean, Powell, if he watches this video, please let me know what, like, the pros and cons of the Vermin versions are, because I'm not sure which one's stronger. Personally, I prefer running more late game, and more sustainability in the late game, but Vermin does allow you to get a lot more extra tempo, and will push you above the 4 1-drop threshold, which is one of the weaknesses of this version of zombies. Same with implants, as you only have those 4 1-drops. But anyway, so on to the 2-drops. We're running 8 2-drops. We've got the Infected Survivor. Infected Survivor is basically the way of hitting anything with 3 speed or higher, because with the hero power you can actually trade with an Elf Scout with this, which is useful. It's also incredibly good with Consume Spirit, because with Consume Spirit, you kill one elf and then kill another one. So, yeah, Infected Survivor is an amazing card at just powering down through 3-speed creatures. Part of the reason for this is just because all corruption removal that you're really looking at in the early game gives negative attack as well, which means you can, say, Fumes a Library Guards and then kill it. Yes, you're down a card, but they're down 3 mana of tempo. Well, 2 mana. But, yeah, it allows you to get tempo through that regard, and your removal works really well with these dorky creatures, and that's part of the reasons why you can play a very, very different style of aggro to others. Corruption aggro has an interesting way of doing it, where in the early game you play your one threat, and then you just keep removing their stuff and getting incremental damage in. and then late game you burn them out. Kind of like with Rage, but you're more focused on creatures to get that extra damage in early, as opposed to in Rage where it's just like, see what you can do, and then just burn them out at the end anyway. So Corruption does play a bit of an interesting tempo game in that regard. Now the other 2-drop is Rotting Remains. Now Rotting Remains will usually deal 3 to the player. It's also very, very good at killing 3-speed threats with the hero power. 3/3 will usually trade with most things. And most of the time, it's just a decent 2-drop. You'll get maybe 3, maybe 5 damage in with this, and then it will die for free. So you're down a card, but you get damage in with your 2-drop, and quite frankly, that's what you need when your late game strategy is burning. So, on to some of the mid-game creatures. We've got 3 mid-game creatures. First things first, the ever-reliable Mesmerizing Spirit. Now, Mesmerizing Spirit's an interesting case because the discard means it's always a 2-for-1, or it should be. But nowadays it's dropped off a bit, and the reason it's dropped off a bit is because of the plethora of ping effects. There's so many of them. We've got Mutant and Vampiric Touch in Dominion, which means that you're actually not gaining card advantage at all. Red can easily get ping effects, and Word of Fire means that you're basically trading 1-for-1 with a Word of Fire. And if they have a Burning Rage, you're just not trading at all. So, yeah, Spirit is not as good as it used to be. It's still a good 3-drop, but it's not as good as it used to be. So it actually is a 3-of, whereas the other 3-drop I'm playing is a 4-of, which is the Insatiable Ghoul. Insatiable Ghoul is the most dorky-looking creature in the game, in my opinion. It's got this weird drawback, and it just has vanilla stats. And it's a very, very vanilla creature, and it's a zombie, and it's like, yeah, it can gain deadly, but it's got 3 attack anyway, so the deadly isn't exactly that relevant. As it turns out, 4 HP is really hard to deal with, and 3/4 stats means it can kill library guards for free with the hero power, and it can't be Haldiri'd, and it can't be Fireballed or Word of Fire. They have to Dragon Fire this thing. Insatiable Ghoul is a pain in the neck to deal with. The only card in the game that deals with Ghoul efficiently is Harpy. That's it. And just nothing else can deal with the Ghoul efficiently. It's kind of hilarious, actually. You can't assassinate it without a weakness counter first. You can't Fireball it. You can't Fumes it. Consume usually hits for 3. It's just the most obnoxious stats in the game to deal with removal. 3/4 is an absolute pain in the neck, and as a result, you may not be able to attack with them every single turn, but it will just get damage in. It will. It's so hard to stop this thing from getting damage in. It will usually get 3 in and then like trade with something or trade with a trick. Like your opponent has to go out of their way to attack it and ambush strike just to kill the Ghoul. And sometimes it's not even that like efficient. I mean, if you're going sharpshooter, ambush strike to kill the Ghoul and then the sharpshooter just dies the next turn, you're not exactly getting a lot out of your sharpshooter, are you? So yeah, Ghoul is an absolute pain in the neck and should never be underestimated. It looks very, very dorky, but is actually quite powerful. Stat distribution for 3 mana is amazing. Now, for the mid-game, we've got 2 creatures. I'm including Tombs in this, but yeah, Necromancer, Tombs. This is the combination. So Tombs gives you zombies for days. When you play it, you get 1, and when it leaves, you get 1, and every turn you get 1, which means there's 4 of them, and it's a legend. You're thinking, huh? But no, multiples are fine. If you don't have time to play a second one, you don't. You just Divine Offering it away. But if you do have time, then you play your Tombs, you get a zombie. Let's say they kill the zombie immediately. Which sometimes you just move it back. So let's say they have a library guards on the board. Or maybe a 2/3 out of Dominion that I can never remember the name of. But anyway. So they have a 2/3 and your zombie's just going to die. So you play Tombs, move the zombie back. Next turn, you make another zombie. And then you play a second Tombs. And then you get 2 more zombies. And then you move it forward. You now have 4 zombies on the board. And that 2/3 is not doing much. Because you will always have 4 on the board, basically. He can't keep the numbers down. And you don't have to attack. Because if your opponent attacks to keep the zombie count down, then you can attack with the rest of them. But if he doesn't attack, you just get more zombies and then overpower him. And the longer Tombs is on the board, the higher chance you have of drawing this guy, the Undead Necromancer, who makes zombies impossible to block efficiently. Outside of Sharpshooter, I guess. That's about it. And even then, the Necromancer trumps the Sharpshooter. So you just play this Necromancer, put it on back row, And they just sit there, and there's nothing your opponent can do about these zombies. And at that point, you're basically saying, you've got to race me, and my entire late game plan involves burn that heals me. That's an incredibly strong late game. And it's one of the reasons why zombies just overpowers control decks. Like, combo decks can beat it, but because they're faster, they get their win condition faster, but control decks have no chance. Tombs of the Damned and Necromancer, mostly Tombs, but you also have the hero powers. So you've got the grindiest game of any deck in the metagame, in my opinion. It's insanely hard to beat a zombie deck in a grinded game, even though they have no draw power. It's just, they have so many permanent threats that it's so difficult to grind out a zombie deck late game, and these two cards are part of the reason for it. Necromancer also can just give deadly to your 2/2 Legionnaire, which is useful. The rest of the deadly, though, deadly on a 3 attack creature is not fantastic, although what you can do is attack with Rotting Remains. They let it go down to 2/2 and they think, alright, I'll just block it next turn, and then you can go Spark Necromancer and trade. That does actually happen, and it's incredibly annoying. You can blindside people with that trick. So anyway, the last creature in the deck is kind of like a spell. It's basically, it's the most efficient creature I can think of. It's absolutely crazy. So, Succubus. For your 4 mana, yes, it's played on curve, it's played on turn 6. However, for your 4 mana, because you're going to go up to 3 levels for multiple reasons anyway, so for your 4 mana, you get your 3/3 with a flying body. Yes, has 2 speed, not the 3 that a lot of people are used to on these kinds of costed creatures. However, you got your 2 speed, you can use the hero power to knock the speed down on things to trade, but more importantly, it has a Word of Pain attached to it. Only instead of cycling, so instead of saying you cycle and then you can play another card, for 2 more mana, you get a 3/3 with flying. Succubus is an incredibly powerful creature. And when you compare it to cards like Dread Knight, this is where you see why Dread Knight doesn't really see play. Dread Knight is easier to block. It doesn't have flying, so it does not give him that guaranteed attack, basically. And Succubus will hit for 6 the first time, because you deal 3 and then you attack for 3. It will hit for 6, but because it's not vulnerable to attack immediately, it's not vulnerable to attack immediately at all, or even just blocking, really. So you can reduce the speed of one creature, consume spirit the other one, and then get more damage in with your Succubus. On top of that, it heals you. So Succubus is an incredibly strong card. And note, life loss, not damage, which means Force Field does not reduce Succubus, which is rather painful to play against with Tempo Wisdom, but yeah. Basically, Force Field does not reduce Succubus damage. That's a no. It does reduce Word of Pain damage, though. It's very confusing. So anyway, that's the creatures out of the way. Now, there aren't many spells in this deck. Well, kind of, Tombs is a spell, but I count as a creature mostly. There aren't many spells in the deck, but oh my god, the corruption spells are incredibly powerful. Like, they are, I think these 3 spells may all be in the top 10 spells in the game. They're incredibly strong. Starting with the weakest one, Noxious Fumes. Yeah, that's the weakest spell in the deck. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, like, Word of Pain is debatably weaker, but that comes in later. Fumes is only a 3 of, because it's a bit clunky. If you draw multiples, you always want 1. But drawing multiples is a bit sketchy in some situations. But Fumes just gets outshone by Consume, mostly. But for those first 2 turns of the game, you want your Noxious Fumes. It gives the -2/-2, it kills Elf Warrior, it kills Assassin, it does so much work. You want your Fumes, it's very efficient. It is not very card efficient against a lot of things, like Gibbo and Ronnie, for instance. However, when it comes down to mana investment, this card will get the job done. It also deals 3 damage effectively with Survivor, because a lot of creatures have 2/3 stats, which means that they will no longer trade with the Survivor. So, Consume Spirit. This card is absolutely insane. Usually this hits for 3 or 2. I mean, it will hit for 3 depending on time of the game, but early game, -1, -1, +1/+1. It's a bit of a bad Fumes at that point, but it gets the job done. That's not fantastic. 1 turn later, it does -2/-2, +2/+2. So you basically combined an Ambush Strike and a Fumes into one card at high speed without, like, you've lost the trick capability. But when you add 2 things that cost the same together, they shouldn't cost just the combined mana. That's already more efficient than a Fumes and an Ambush Strike, in my opinion. Not accounting for the instant. So anyway, you put them together, yeah, you get your consume. One turn later, because often you do go into 3 corruption immediately, depending on how many consumes you do. It does -3, -3, +3, +3. That would kill almost any creature that's played competitively, and deal 3 damage to the face for 2 mana. Consume is incredibly strong. It's also one of the reasons why, along with Word of Pain, you can often go up to 4 or 5 corruption levels. I've hit 5 before, it's very rare though. But 4 corruption levels for lethal is not unheard of, and it deals massive amounts of damage. And combined with the 7 flyers in the deck, the Succubus and Mesmerizing Spirit, it allows you to play your creature. The next turn, you consume, kill his blocker, and get 5 damage in with a Spirit, or 6 with a Succubus. That's a chunk of their life going right there. It also lets you get 2-for-1 trades with the consume. It's an incredibly strong spell, and it's one of the reasons why this deck is a mono corruption deck. Second reason this is mono. Word of Pain. The Succubus trigger on a cantrip. That's basically what this is. Pretty simple. It cantrips, which is something you don't really have access to outside of that, so it does let you get lethals that no other card would. Most of the time, though, you play this once you get to 3 levels, and you play your Word of Pains, they cycle, you deal 3 damage, and then along with your Succubus, you can deal, say, 9 damage from hand over multiple turns, and you gain life, so it delays the game and gives you more chance to draw these burn spells. So you're playing your 8 burn spells, and between them, because Word of Pain draws you cards and Succubus stays on the board, you'll probably get, out of, say, 2 Word of Pains and a Succubus, you'll probably get 12 damage in a lot of situations. And in addition to consume, means that any creatures can also be transformed into burn spells. So these kind of burn spells are what really makes this deck actually viable. Now, shrine count. 19 shrines because I'm running 4 skill shrines, and you're going to need to divine these away a decent amount. So, Haunted Cemetery is, in my opinion, actually more powerful than Sanctum. I think it's close, but Sanctum is not very good against certain decks. Well, they both kind of rely on your opponent having creatures. But Haunted Cemetery will allow you to generate velocity on board, because you can use, say, a Consume, kill his library guards, make a zombie, and then if he has another 2-3 stat creature or a 3-3, and you have a Tombs, suddenly there's an extra zombie that he can't deal with, because the Tombs and the 2-3 cancel out for a bit, right? Unless you move the zombies back. So the 2-3 and the Tombs cancel, but then if you get an extra zombie every few turns, suddenly you don't have to move them back. This stalemate is not a stalemate anymore. It's just every couple of turns you gain a zombie, so your board gets larger and larger and larger. So Haunted Cemetery is surprisingly powerful. Also, it has very cheap requirements. 1 mana, 2 levels is an incredibly cheap requirement, and you'll be able to play this probably every single time it's off cooldown in a lot of situations, because 1 mana is not a lot, and corruption removal doesn't cost much in the way of mana. Sanctum of the Void. Sanctum of the Void is how you beat mid-range decks. It's incredibly good against mid-range decks in particular, because they usually only have 2 or 3 creatures maximum. So you Fumes their small ones, Sanctum, they have to lose a big one. 3-turn cooldown is a long, long cooldown. However, 2 mana, you get your removal. It also means every 3 turns, if you don't have any other removal, you can use both hero powers and just grind your opponent out with that. Sanctum plus Haunted Cemetery counters creatures that they could be using to counter your Tombs, which means combined they actually just completely destroy any control decks, because they don't have that many creatures, but their creatures are very efficient when it comes to trading, and your Sanctum gets rid of their creatures, and then the Tombs will do the rest. That's basically the grind out combo, and is why this deck is very, very favored against a lot of control decks. Now, because it's towards the beginning of the season, I'll just say my final rank game. But, so in terms of matchups, Elves is not fantastic, but Elves is good against everything, so I'm not really going to refer to that much. Although it's not unwinnable. It's not unwinnable. You can get some nice consumes off with your Infected Survivors, kill multiple Elves at once, so that can work. Consume also is one of the only efficient ways mid to late game of dealing with Nienna, so that's a plus. Now, besides that, control decks have serious issues against zombies. Even Harpy decks have some issues, because Tombs of the Damned will negate Harpy's effect, like, permanently. In fact, it does more than that, because you play it, get a zombie, and then it negates it from then on. So that protects the rest of your creatures until you draw a Consume to actually deal with the Harpy. So most control decks have serious issues. Cataclysm doesn't work against this kind of deck at all. Infected Survivor is very good at dealing with that. One turn heal is an interesting thing because it basically depends on what you draw. It's a very draw dependent matchup, and there's very little thought put into any of the decision making on either side of that matchup. Basically, it comes down to your opponent drawing Angelic Song and Pacify instead of relying on the hero power, because the hero power on Infected Survivors will still result in damage hitting them. And it depends on how many Infected Survivors the zombie player draws, and also how many Word of Pain Succubus. If they draw tons of Word of Pain Succubus, then they win. The other thing is, if they have a very fast opener, like Zombie, Rotting Remains, Ghoul, Infected Survivor to absorb the Electrostatic Storm hits, like, the one-turn heal player is just dead. But, on the other hand, if they get a slower draw and they don't get a lot of burn, then they're not going to be able to win that matchup. I'll just put it that way. Outside of that, we've got Mono Rage. Mono Rage is actually a very good matchup for zombies. The main reason for it is because Burning Rage does drain a little bit of life over time, but Succubus and Word of Pain work incredibly well against those. Now, this is not a bad hand. It does have the Rotting Remains to counter Assassin. I think I'm going to keep it. It's not the best hand I've ever seen, but I'm going to keep it. Alright, I'm actually going to go for a... Well, first we'll go up mana. I'm going to go for a... Oh, that's unfortunate. I'm going to go for a Ghoul into Ghoul here, I think. The 3/4s are a pain in the neck to deal with. Okay. That's a problem. Now, if he has Overcharger, I think I just lose here if I play this with the Ghoul. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to play Rotting Remains, and I'm just going to Spark Fumes, the one that can attack, so we can't play an Overcharger straight up. Outside of that, I think we're going to get rid of this Tombs, because the Tombs is not going to do a lot of damage here. The Haunted Cemetery is fairly handy. We'll take it. Yeah, this matchup is an interesting one. Didn't really get to talk about Implants or waiting for the Q, which is actually kind of fortunate that we ended up matching against it. It's not fantastic. The Implants themselves are a bit of a problem, so you kind of have to play a strategy where you're just trying to remove the stuff as it comes down. There is a lot more removal, but this version doesn't play Vermin, which means that stuff like Spoiled Aristocrat becomes harder to get rid of. This is where I'd really like it if I had the Haunted Cemetery like down, because then I could go level and then go from there. I think what we have to do here is Fumes. Do we cycle the Word of Pain though? I think we get rid of a Ghoul because I don't see playing multiple. There's the second Cemetery. This is really unfortunate. Now, I think we just have to cycle the Word of Pain and Fumes. I don't like playing it like that, but I kind of had to. I can't afford to let him play an Implant here. And next turn I can go for a Ghoul plus Zombie Legionnaire. Or Tombs, that's good actually. Yeah, we'll just let this go. 3 Succubus to the bottom. Alright, that requires counting actually. Move this back. I don't usually count cards with Divine Offering, but it's kind of necessary here. So yeah, because there's 3 Succubus on the bottom 5, so I have to keep track of those, because I can't let that remain. Now, I could just go for a Zombify on the Raven, plus a Sanctum. This is a really difficult play. I think I actually go for Consume on the Library Guards, plus Zombify. Yeah, this lets me move my zombies forward. I have to Divine though, because there's Succubi on the bottom that I really need to get back up at some point. Like, if this game goes long enough, I'll need them. So there's now 3 Succubus, 10 cards from the base. An Implant would be a serious issue here. Like, if he goes for an Implant, I have to just go for a Succubus. On the plus side, though, like, he could go Implant plus Vampiric, take out 2 zombies, but I'm stalling for time. And I think that's how I'm going to win this at this point. 3-1. That's unfortunate, because that gives him the free kill. He did not have an Implant. Curious. This has become a very awkward play. Now, I can go for Sanctum here. Because then he'd have to sacrifice the Spoiled Aristocrat, and then I can take a kill. The problem is I can't do anything else with my mana, so I'm not even sure if I can do that. Rotting Remains is not helpful. I'll just play the Succubus. Yeah, this has become very, very difficult. And then I just have to pass the turn because this can eat zombies. And I do want to stall for time, so I'll leave them on front row. Yeah. I think that might just be game over. I don't have any answer to the Gnome Surgeon. Yeah, he gets the free kill. That's game. I don't think I can come back from that. Gnome Surgeon's too much here. Yeah. Stumbled a bit in the early game. Now I can just go Spirit, Sanctum, reduce speed. The Spirit does die to the Vampiric, but I don't think that matters. There's just too much on the board right now. That's what it is. See what he sacks. Sack the Assassin, probably. It doesn't do much. Oh, okay, that's interesting. I think the Assassin does far less than the 3-1. Am I dead? 6, 7, 8, 7? No. I have to keep using Divine. Not that this, I don't think this game's going to go long enough for me to start getting my Succubus, but you never know. Maybe if he just draws really badly from here. Another mutant. Yeah, I don't think there was any way of me coming back from that. I didn't have a removal for the Gnome Surgeon. So he's just gonna gain too much life, and there's not much I can do about it. Like, I could draw double Consume or something silly, but I'm not even sure if that would do it. There's the Necromancer. No, I'm dead. Alright. Bit unfortunate, but it happens. Yeah, I stumbled a bit in the early game. Probably shouldn't have kept that hand overall. Yeah, in hindsight, I think maybe I should have mulliganed for something a bit more removal heavy. Oh, quest. But yeah, I should have probably mulliganed for something a little bit more removal heavy given the matchup. Because relying on a creature opening against implants is very risky because of the Spoiled Aristocrat openings they can have. And he had a Spoiled Aristocrat, which meant that not having any removal in my opening hand kind of screwed me over. But anyway, thank you all for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe. If you have any feedback or want to ask me any questions, put it in the comment section below. But as for now, it's been Jotto, signing off.